Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. I strongly believe that assault weapons have no place on our streets at all. And I think we should all at least be able to agree that teenagers who cannot even buy a beer should not be able to buy assault weapons. I've introduced a bill called the Age 21 Act, which would prohibit the sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines to anyone under the age of 21. Under current law, people who are under the age of 21 are not allowed to purchase handguns, but they are allowed to purchase assault weapons. And this disparity simply doesn't make sense, and it certainly costs lives. Chief, what particular risks do law enforcement officers face when young people are allowed easy access to assault weapons and high-capacity magazines? We have more than one chief.
We do.
All chiefs. Please.
Thank you very much. You know, when I think of young folk, I think of folks who are still going through mental development, and we want to make sure that people have that opportunity to exercise the right. But when you think of a young person who can't appreciate the consequences of an emotional act, I am personally, and I speak on my behalf, concerned to see young folks having that ability to carry those types of firearms. And I worry about our officers. The last thing that our officers want is to have an encounter which leads to a catastrophic end where some young person loses their life. It's very difficult on them. Use of force is something that our officers take incredibly serious. And being put in that kind of situation is incredibly difficult. And those catastrophic ends are hard for even our officers to process.
Thank you. Chief, please.
Thank you for the question. I would agree with the chief. We're now talking about people who are not fully developed, not only physical, but mentally and emotional, and are just totally unaware of the long-standing consequences of that decision. Number one, that is a weapon of war, and it's also a weapon designed to create great carnage and damage. It's not just a weapon for one to defend oneself. And they're making that decision to create carnage and damage, not realizing the long-lasting effect that it has on the families of the person who or persons that they hit and kill, but how much damage it actually does, and then how much they will deal with that in their own lives after pulling that trigger. Ma'am, I say this all the time. The decision to pull the trigger is not made when the trigger is pulled. The decision to pull a trigger is actually made when a person puts their hand on a firearm and walks out of the door. They have then predisposed themselves to use that weapon should they need to, or have it used against them. So it really is a way of thinking that we have to change, not just with young people, but with all people, but with young people specifically. They're just not aware and don't have enough life experience to understand how difficult it will be for them and what they do to families of victims they kill and even victims who survive, how badly damaged those people are because of the volatility of those types of weapons.
Right. Anybody else have a comment?
Senator Feinstein, I agree with my peers. I think when the assault weapons ban was in place in the past, we had a 66% reduction in the use during that 10-year period. And so it makes perfect sense to go back to where we were at. And the IACP has always supported that.
Well, just a comment. I authored the assault weapons ban before, and I'm at it again. So I would appreciate any support from law enforcement that is possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.